I gazed at the glowing message on my phone, a faint smile touching my lips despite the gravity of the unfolding situation. Flying to Rome with your lover, have fun being poor. James's final, derisive jab gleamed mockingly on the display. Oh, if only he truly understood. My name is Natalie, and at 29, I had never anticipated orchestrating an international task force while meticulously tracking my husband's desperate attempt to flee through JFK Airport. Yet, here I was, parked just outside the terminal, observing the entire operation unfold via the live feeds on my laptop. The irony of it all was almost poetic. James believed he was so clever, systematically emptying what he thought were our personal bank accounts. He was completely unaware that those very accounts were sophisticated fronts we had established weeks prior, precisely when we first caught wind of his embezzlement scheme. As the senior vice president of finance at Morton and Blake Investment Group, my husband had been methodically siphoning millions from client funds for months. He genuinely considered himself invulnerable, even brilliant. That very arrogance would ultimately be his undoing. I'd sensed something was amiss for several weeks. The prolonged hours at the office, the hushed phone conversations, and his sudden, intense curiosity about our financial arrangements. The moment I uncovered the initial signs of suspicious transfers, I didn't confront him. Instead, I immediately presented my findings to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. That's when Agent Catherine Torres became a presence in our lives, though James knew her only as Amanda, the stunning new client who seemed captivated by both our investment services and him personally. Target is nearing the security checkpoint. Agent Torres' voice crackled through my earpiece. He's with the female operative now. I watched through the camera feed as James confidently strode through the terminal, his arm casually around the waist of the woman he believed was his mistress. He had no clue she was one of our top undercover agents, nor that his every step was under the watchful eyes of a dozen law enforcement officers. Remember, I murmured into my mic, he's likely carrying the backup drive with all the transaction records. Don't let him ditch it. Copy that, came the swift reply. All the pieces were now perfectly aligned. It was simply a matter of witnessing my husband's elaborate escape plan disintegrate around him. I almost felt a flicker of pity for him. Almost that in retrospect, I should have detected the warning signs much earlier. 6 months ago, when James began pressuring me to merge all our financial accounts, I had naively assumed it was a gesture of trust and commitment to our marriage. He had proposed it so persuasively during dinner at our favorite restaurant, his brown eyes sincere as he spoke of building our shared future. His apparent desire for transparency touched me, and I never suspected it was all part of his broader scheme to gain unrestricted access to everything we owed. However, James was unaware of my background. Forensic accounting wasn't just a detail on my resume. Before joining Morton and Blake, I had dedicated 3 years to investigating corporate fraud schemes. Those specialized skills never truly fade the meticulous attention to detail, the innate ability to discern patterns in financial discrepancies, and the gut feeling when something simply doesn't add up. The first clear indication was the shift in his daily routine. James had always been incredibly disciplined, leaving for work precisely at 7:30 a.m. and returning by 6 p.m. Then, abruptly, he started having emergency client meetings that frequently kept him at the office until past midnight. I might have bought into his excuses, except I once caught him in a lie. His urgent client call revealed a Dubai area code at 3 a.m. their time. The second red flag emerged from his sudden intense interest in our home security system. He insisted on upgrading every component, installing numerous cameras and motion sensors. At the time, I commended his diligence in safeguarding our home. Now, I understood he was likely just worried about being observed himself, especially within his home office, where he conducted the majority of his illicit transfers. Our account manager called. He'd mentioned offhandedly last week. She suggested, "We diversify some investments. I'll take care of everything." The confidence in his voice almost, but not quite, concealed his nervousness. That's when I reached out to Agent Torres. Within mere hours, we had a comprehensive plan in motion. The FBI had already been investigating a series of suspicious international transfers originating from Morton and Blake, but they lacked concrete evidence connecting it to an insider. I could provide that crucial link. "I'm doing this for us," James had whispered that morning as he kissed me goodbye, believing I was still asleep. "We'll have everything we've ever dreamed of." If only he knew that his grand dreams of escape were on the verge of transforming into his worst nightmare. My phone buzzed again with another message, this time a photograph. Jams at a champagne bar in the terminal, clinking glasses with the woman he thought was his mistress. "Thanks for making this so easy," his text read. "BTW, I took a little extra from your personal emergency fund. Consider it payment for 5 years of pretending to love you." The words stung more deeply than I had anticipated. Even fully aware of his true character, even after uncovering his extensive crimes, that casual cruelty caused a sharp tightening in my chest. I recalled the evening we first met, both new employees at Morton and Blake, sharing takeout Chinese food during late-night training sessions. I remembered him bringing me soup when I was sick with the flu, how he had held my hand at my father's funeral. Had every single moment been an elaborate charade? "Target is becoming agitated," Agent Torres reported through my earpiece. "He's checked his watch 3 times in the last minute." I pulled up the terminal security feed. James was trying to appear composed, but I could clearly discern the tension in his shoulders. He repeatedly glanced at his phone, likely checking the time until his flight. That's when I noticed something that sent a chill down my spine. He was carrying my father's vintage leather briefcase, the one I had inherited after Dad's passing. The realization ignited something within me. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about every deception, every manipulation, every instance he had exploited my trust. I thought of the clients whose lives he had potentially devastated, the families whose life savings he had stolen, all while meticulously playing the part of the devoted husband. "Agent Torres," I stated into my mic, my voice steady despite the surge of emotion within me. "The evidence is in my father's briefcase. He always claimed it was the most secure place for vital documents. Knowing James, he's using it to transport the backup drive and any incriminating papers. Copy that," she responded. "We'll ensure it's secured." I watched as James checked his phone once more, his expression growing visibly more anxious. He had no idea that his supposed mistress had already alerted airport security about a suspicious package, guaranteeing they would be pulled aside for additional screening. He was oblivious to the fact that we had already frozen the accounts. He believed he had emptied. He was probably bewildered why his Rome-bound flight was inexplicably delayed. Time to conclude this deception, I thought, picking up my phone and composing one final message. "Perhaps you should speak with the police. Officer behind you first." Through the security camera feed, I witnessed James's face contort as he read my message. His confident smirk vanished, replaced by a sudden flash of panic as he spun around. The police officer wasn't actually directly behind him yet, but his reaction told me everything I needed to know. He was guilty, and he knew he was in deep trouble. "All units in position," Agent Torres' voice crackled in my earpiece. "We've got eyes on all exits." James was now moving, walking briskly toward the international terminal, my father's briefcase clutched tightly against his chest. His mistress maintained pace beside him, one hand casually resting on his arm. I knew she was ensuring he couldn't make a run for it. My phone rang an unrecognized number. I answered, my eyes still fixed on the security feed. "Your little game ends now, Natalie." James's voice was cold, yet controlled. "I possess copies of every transaction you've ever authorized. If I go down, you're coming with me." A shiver ran down my spine. He was bluffing. He had to be. I had been meticulous, documenting everything since I first suspected his scheme. Yet, there was something in his tone that made me uneasy. "Really?" I kept my voice level. "And what transactions would those be?" Don't pretend to be innocent, Natalie. Those offshore accounts, the shell companies, I have proof you were involved from the very beginning. Who do you think they'll believe? The devoted husband attempting to shield his wife's interests, or the scorned woman seeking revenge? My heart pounded. He was trying to reverse the narrative, make me appear to be the culpable one. Classic James, always manipulating the situation to his advantage. But he had made one crucial error. Interesting theory, I responded. Have you shared this evidence with Amanda? There was a noticeable pause. Through the camera feed, I observed him glance at the woman beside him. What does she have to do with this? Everything. I allowed myself a small smile. You see, Agent Torres has been very interested in hearing about those offshore accounts. The color visibly drained from his face on the screen. I watch him take a step back from his companion, realization slowly dawning in his eyes. But it was too late. In one fluid motion, she had his arm twisted behind his back. James Anderson, you're under arrest for embezzlement and corporate fraud, she announced, her voice resonating across the terminal as other agents closed in. But then, something unexpected occurred. James began to laugh. No, Natalie, he said. Into the phone, his voice laced with mockery despite his compromised position. You truly believe this is over? Check your email. I just sent you something quite interesting from the corporate server. Turns out your father wasn't as faultless as you imagined. The phone slipped from my suddenly clammy palm. With trembling fingers, I opened my email. There it was, a folder titled Thomas Bennett Project Files, my father's name. I clicked it open, and my entire world tilted beneath my feet. The documents consumed my screen. Transaction records, emails, meeting minutes, all dating back to when my father served as CFO at Morton and Blake 15 years ago. My hands shook as I scrolled. The project file's meticulously detailed systematic account. Manipulation, expertly concealed beneath layers of legitimate transactions. The pattern was strikingly familiar, precisely the same method James had been employing. Natalie, Agent Torres' voice cut through my daze. We've got him secured, but he's demanding to speak with his lawyer. He knew. I interrupted, my voice barely a whisper. All this time, James knew about my father's involvement. That's why he chose me. That's why he pushed so hard to work at Morton and Blake. Through the terminal security feed, I could see James being led away by agents, that same smug smile still playing on his lips. He had anticipated this moment. Even in handcuffs, he held a secret advantage. Your father's case was before my time. Agent Torres said cautiously, what exactly are we looking at? I quickly forwarded her the files. James didn't invent this embezzlement scheme. He discovered my father's old blueprint and expanded upon it. The offshore accounts, the shell company's dad laid the groundwork 15 years ago. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Every cherished memory of my father, his integrity, his principles, the lessons he taught me about right and wrong now seemed tainted. Had James been observing me all these years, patiently waiting for the opportune moment to leverage this information, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I've got more files, much more. Drop the charges, or everything about Thomas Bennett goes public. Your choice, darling. I felt nauseous. James had orchestrated this perfectly. If the truth about my father came to light, it wouldn't just shatter his legacy. It would implicate dozens of current Morton and Blake executives who had worked alongside him. The ensuing scandal would devastate the firm and everyone connected to it. He's trying to use this as leverage, isn't he? Agent Torres inquired, interpreting my silence. Yes, I conceded, but he's made one crucial error. I pulled up the original files my father had bequeathed to me, those stored on an encrypted drive I'd found after his death. James couldn't have known about these. It was impossible. Dad had documented absolutely everything, including the names of those who had coerced him into the scheme. My father wasn't the mastermind, I declared, my voice growing stronger. He was the whistleblower, and I can prove it. The scattered pieces were now cohering. Dad hadn't been able to come forward before his passing, but he had left every shred of evidence I needed to complete what he had begun. James had only seen half. The story, the portion that appeared incriminating. He had no idea he had just handed me the key to exposing the entire corruption ring at Morton and Blake. I hurried to my office at Morton and Blake, Agent Torres close behind. The building was almost deserted at this hour, but I knew precisely where to search. My father's old office, now a mere storage room, contained the final piece of evidence we required. Your father suspected this might happen, I explained as we descended to the basement level. He left me a series of clues in his personal journals. I never fully grasped them until now. The storage room was a chaotic mix of antiquated filing, cabinets, and forgotten furniture. In one corner stood my father's venerable desk, deemed too heavy to relocate. I ran my fingers along its underside, locating the hidden catch he had meticulously described in his journals. With a soft click, a small compartment sprang open. Got it, I breathed, extracting a weathered USB drive. Miss Bennett, a voice, called from the doorway. We turned to discover Harold Wright, Morton and Blake's current CEO, observing us with chilling eyes. I believe you possess something that rightfully belongs to the company. Two security guards flanked him. This was not a good development. Actually, I replied, maintaining a steady voice. This now belongs to the FBI. I handed the drive to Agent Torres, who quickly secured it. Wright's composed facade visibly fractured. You're making a grave error, Natalie. Consider your career, your reputation, your father's legacy, my father's legacy. A surge of anger coursed through me. You mean the legacy you and the board fabricated when you compelled him to participate in your scheme? When you threatened to ruin him if he didn't help conceal your fraud? Wright's expression darkened. You can't prove any of that, really. I pulled out my phone and played a recording, my father's voice, weak but clear, documenting every last detail of the firm's corruption in his final days. Dad may not have lived to testify, but he made sure the truth would come out right. Lunged for Agent Torres, but the security guards, who I now realized were actually FBI agents, apprehended him first. As they led him away in handcuffs, I noticed James being escorted through the lobby below. Their eyes met, and I watched the color drain from my husband's face as he finally comprehended that his powerful allies were powerless to assist him anymore. Your father would be proud, Agent Torres murmured softly. I nodded, emotion threatening to overwhelm me. The evidence on that drive would expose decades of corruption at Morton and Blake, unequivocally clearing my father's name and dismantling everyone involved in the elaborate scheme. James had considered himself exceptionally clever, using my father's past against me, but he had never truly understood the kind of man Thomas Bennett genuinely was. My phone buzzed again. Another message from James. We can still resolve this. I'll reveal everything about your father's involvement. I smiled as I composed my reply. Go ahead. The whole truth is precisely what I want them to hear. The following morning, I sat in the FBI's Manhattan office, watching the inevitable consequences unfold across multiple screens. News channels simultaneously broadcast the same story, a massive fraud scheme exposed at Morton and Blake, with its CEO and several executives arrested. Agent Torres handed me a coffee as we observed the coverage. 17 arrests so far, she reported. Your father's evidence was irrefutable. The encrypted timestamps conclusively proved the board's manipulation of his original reports. They can't possibly claim he acted alone. James appeared on one screen, being led into court. His tailored suit was rumpled, his once confident smirk replaced by an expression of utter defeat. The reporter's voice permeated the room. James Anderson, alongside CEO Harold Wright, faces multiple charges of fraud and embezzlement. Sources indicate the scheme dates back 15 years, with recent evidence revealing an attempted whistleblowing effort by former CFO Thomas Bennett. Your father's name has been cleared, Agent Torres stated softly. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. Dad had made the ultimate sacrifice to reveal the truth, meticulously documenting the corruption while outwardly appearing to cooperate. He had known the evidence would eventually emerge. He simply hadn't lived to witness it. An email arrived from James's lawyer. My client wishes to convey the following message. You've ruined everything. I hope you're satisfied. I smiled as I drafted my response. Please inform your client that he ruined everything himself. And yes, I am satisfied. Justice has finally been served. 1 month later, I was present in the courtroom as the judge delivered the verdicts. James's face remained impassive as he listened to his sentence: 20 years for corporate fraud, embezzlement, and attempted flight to avoid prosecution. Harold Wright and the other implicated executives received comparable sentences. The deep-seated corruption at Morton and Blake had been entirely brought to light, and the firm was now undergoing a complete overhaul under new leadership. The federal investigation had successfully recovered the majority of the stolen funds. The money would be returned to the affected clients, along with additional compensation from the firm's insurance. My father's meticulously detailed records had made all of this possible. His final, profound gift to the people he had striven to protect. After the sentencing, Agent Torres approached me with an unexpected proposition. The FBI's Financial Crimes Division could certainly utilize someone with your unique skills, she said. Someone who comprehends how these schemes operate from the inside. Would you be interested in consulting for us? I reflected on my father, on how he had fought to expose the truth while simultaneously safeguarding his family. I considered all the other companies where similar fraudulent activities might be occurring, other families who might be enduring similar suffering. Yes, I replied, I would. As I departed the courthouse, I felt a profound lightness I hadn't experienced in months. My father's name had been vindicated, justice had been achieved, and I had discovered a renewed purpose. Sometimes, the most potent revenge isn't about getting even. It's about ensuring that the truth ultimately prevails.